this ring. It's the greatest weapon in the universe.
When and if to use it, that's the whole ballgame.
There's been a ton of buzz around this one, since it's the first major Green Lantern solo project since Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern movie back in 2011. DC and Warner Brothers were basically too gun-shy to touch another Green Lantern project after that. And we're talking almost 15 years of silence on the big budget front. So today we're digging into whether they finally managed to redeem themselves and whether this series actually delivers. James Gunn even joked that when he first stepped into his role as DC's answer to Kevin Feige, he called up Ryan Reynolds to ask if he wanted to reprise Hal Jordan. That was purely a gag though. There was never a real plan to bring him back. This version of Lanterns was always the intended direction. For anyone who missed the avalanche of trailers I covered over the past year, Lanterns is an HBO series, not a film, and it's built as a genuine detective mystery drama. It weaves classic Green Lantern mythology into a story with huge cosmic stakes, and it's fully canon within James Gunn's DCU movie continuity. It ultimately ties in Man of Tomorrow, the upcoming second Superman film, but this isn't just a prequel tacked onto that movie. It stands as its own story, with just enough connective threads to link it to the present-day DCU timeline. The bulk of the action unfolds on Earth, centering on an older, more seasoned Hal Jordan as he mentors rookie John Stewart, freshly chosen by the Guardians of Oa to protect Earth's sector. This all happens right around the time Guy Gardner is about to receive his own ring. When the series opens earlier in the timeline, Guy hasn't been lanternized yet, but within a couple of years, closer to the DCU's present day, a few years before the first Superman film in 2025, he's officially got his ring too. That means by the time Man of Tomorrow rolls around in 2026-2027, Earth has multiple Green Lanterns active simultaneously. The show does hop around quite a bit through Hal's personal timeline. We see him getting his ring in 1986, then jump to 1996, then 2006, before landing on 2016, which is where the majority of the series actually takes place, following the central mystery in a sleepy Nebraska town. We also get brief glimpses of the DCU's present day in 2026, right before Man of Tomorrow kicks off. While the story does venture across the wider cosmic sector that Hal and Earth's lanterns are responsible for patrolling, the first half especially stays grounded on Earth. Still, there's plenty of classic cosmic Green Lantern flavor woven in, the kind of space opera material longtime comic readers will recognize instantly. This isn't a detective show that ignores its sci-fi roots. Cosmic elements show up even in the premiere. That said, Episode 1 leans much harder into the detective noir side of things. Most of the early cosmic material comes through as dialogue, characters referencing galactic events, off-world happenings, and deep-cut lore, particularly around how Hal Jordan first got his ring in this universe. Kyle Chandler plays Hal Jordan, and he's phenomenal. Genuinely one of my favorite parts of the show so far. Most people know him from Friday Night Lights. And honestly, those early episodes carry a bit of that same energy. Jon Stewart is played by Aaron Pierre, who's been excellent in everything I've seen so far. My main reference point for him beforehand was Rebel Ridge. Even though Chandler was cast primarily to embody the older, grittier, more world-weary Hal later in his career, the time-jumping structure means we also meet younger versions of him across the decades, and each version feels distinct, shaped by whatever chaos went down during that era. The core mystery, the one with universe-altering consequences, plays out in 2016 in that small Nebraska town, a full decade before the DCU's present day, and per James Gunn, Man of Tomorrow is set in 2027, matching its actual release year, since the DCU is designed to progress in real time. Now, addressing the Ryan Reynolds-shaped elephant in the room, one of the biggest departures from the 2011 film is the origin story approach. That movie leaned heavily on CGI, something Reynolds has mercilessly mocked in his own Deadpool films ever since, whether roasting the shaky story, the questionable production choices, or that infamous supersuit. He loves ripping into himself. Understandably. That earlier film's overall tone was much bigger, brighter, occasionally even silly, clearly aiming to appeal to younger viewers, with jokes flying constantly in true Reynolds fashion. This new HBO series is basically its polar opposite. Though it's not entirely humorless, Hal still cracks jokes, but if you've seen True Detective, think more along the lines of the dry, sardonic banter between Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson. Interesting bit of production history here. Greg Berlanti and Mark Guggenheim, the duo behind the Arrowverse, Flash, Arrow, Crisis on Infinite Earths, and more, were originally attached to develop this Lantern series a few years back. HBO ultimately parted ways with them. By their own account, there's no bad blood, but HBO quietly asked them to step aside because the network wanted a True Detective style Green Lantern show, which wasn't the direction they wanted to take. Enter Damon Lindelof, fresh off HBO's Watchmen, though most people know him from Lost. He's worked on plenty of major projects since, but he's also a lifelong Green Lantern comic fan. There's actually an old photo of him wearing a Green Lantern shirt at a Lost Season 1 panel at San Diego Comic-Con back in the early 2000s, long before any of his big HBO credits. Alongside him is Chris Mundy, the series' actual showrunner, and Tom King, well known for his extensive DC Comics work and his contributions across the DCU's TV slate, including Mr. Miracle, currently adapting his own comic. Together, they built this True Detective flavored take on Green Lantern. So if you've read Green Lantern comics, even casually, your real prep work here is watching some of True Detective Season 1 to get a feel for the tone, especially for the first half of the series. And when I say True Detective, I specifically mean Season 1, which most fans agree is the show's high point. As of posting this, I haven't finished every episode yet. HBO is keeping several major reveals under wraps, mystery character identities, big story twists, but the casting across the board, leads and supporting cast alike, feels rock solid. The biggest point of debate will likely be the show's mystery box structure. Episode 1 asks a lot of its audience, classic HBO taking a bold swing right out of the gate. It's betting that Green Lantern fans will stick around long enough to see the major twist pay off by series' end. The good news is that many of the big questions raised in Episode 1 get resolved around Episode 5, marking a clear tonal shift roughly halfway through. The back half feels noticeably more comic book flavored than the front half. I just wrapped my House of the Dragon Season 3 coverage, and I've been covering Game of Thrones adjacent shows for nearly 15 years now, so if you've followed any of that, you know HBO's pattern. Big swings, major twists, slow burn payoffs. That's exactly the playbook. Lanterns is running. One challenge facing a lot of comic book adaptations, especially the newer DCU HBO shows, is that they tend to attract younger viewers, or at least parents expect them to be kid-friendly. This is decidedly not that kind of show. It's a mature, R-rated Green Lantern story built for adults, designed from the ground up as a traditional HBO Sunday night drama in the vein of True Detective, The Sopranos, or Game of Thrones. So if you're wondering why HBO greenlit an adult-oriented comic book show, remember, this is an HBO production, not a DC one. DC essentially licensed the characters to HBO, offering guidance on character accuracy and ensuring it threads properly into the film continuity. Since it is canon, Aaron Pierre's Green Lantern will appear in Man of Tomorrow next year, even though James Gunn oversees the DCU broadly, acting as its Kevin Feige equivalent. His direct involvement in Lanterns was fairly limited, mostly high-level oversight. The series is built to run multiple seasons, but the core mystery of Season 1 will reportedly be fully resolved by the finale. A second season would then launch a new mystery, likely seeded by something in that finale, which I haven't seen yet as of this posting. There are a handful of minor adjustments to Green Lantern lore and character timelines to make everything mesh with Gunn's DCU continuity, but for the most part, the source material is treated faithfully, keeping in mind that Green Lantern comics have been retconned repeatedly over the decades anyway. Longtime readers will likely catch plenty of name drops and background Easter eggs right away. Even so, it feels like the creative team built something that both longtime comic readers and newcomers can enjoy. There's plenty of connective tissue to other DC properties sprinkled throughout. Nathan Fillion's Guy Gardner shows up, along with Sinestro, the Guardians of Oa, and the Manhunters. The show also does solid work establishing how Hal Jordan fits into the DCU's broader timeline before Superman ever puts on the cape and cowl. Since metahumans have apparently been public knowledge on this Earth for roughly 300 years, and Vandal Savage's history stretches back hundreds of thousands of years before that. So there were plenty of heroes and villains already active back in the 80s and 90s when Hal first got his ring. Even background details like the Justice Gang banner in the Hall of Justice are canon to DCU history. The series does a nice job expanding on that pre-Superman world building. But again, the first half stays mostly grounded in detective thriller territory, with Green Lantern elements woven in, while the second half reportedly goes much bigger and more comic book driven as it barrels toward the finale, right up to the events leading into Man of Tomorrow. Getting into specifics there would mean spoilers, so I'll save that deeper analysis for my weekly episode breakdowns. My full Episode 1 review drops Sunday night right after it airs. It's taking over. House of the Dragon. Zen's old time slot, and the season runs 8 episodes total. That alone tells you how much confidence HBO has in this one. They're treating it with the same prestige as House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones, rather than the more irreverent, R-rated but jokier tone of something like Peacemaker, which aired on the more traditional Superhero Thursday slot. So HBO, DC, and Warner Brothers are clearly treating Lanterns with more gravity than most of their other live-action DCU shows. The good news, creatively, this feels like a real step up from the 2011 film. The catch, it may be a tough sell for die-hard comic fans who aren't into slow-burn HBO prestige dramas like True Detective. Once you've had a chance to watch it yourself, drop your thoughts in the comments. I know there'll be plenty of questions about the mysteries teased in the early episodes, and I'll be addressing those in my breakdown videos. Also, DC is now selling actual lantern rings, so expect ring giveaways in my episode coverage, just like the old Flash ring giveaways back in the day. James Gunn is still deep in production on Man of Tomorrow, so we'll see if any new footage surfaces while Lanterns airs weekly. Leaks are always possible, and we're also right in the middle of D23, meaning a wave of new trailers is expected this weekend. I'll be covering anything that drops, so make sure notifications are on for the channel. Thanks so much for watching. See you in the next one.